9, where you'll play a slightly better player. If you lose, you move down again to Arena 10. If you keep winning, you'll move up the arenas and play better and better players. This map ensures that you're never wasting your time playing against someone who's at a low level. So if you want actual good practice, join the Discord and play with us every single day. Also, real quick before we move on, if we hit 1,000 users, my code MARINTM, I'll make a highly detailed video VOD reviewing 5 of you guys, explaining everything you need to do to drastically improve. We're now at 681 users, so thank you so much to everyone who's put in the code. Now, let's get back. Another way a ton of controller pros cheated back in the day was of course with the Cronus Zen, a little device that allowed you to essentially get macros, reduce recoil completely, and enhance the aim assist. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about the Cronus Zen because everybody knows the story of this device. The thing though is that it was literally a well-kept secret for a long time. You see, a lot of players in the early days of Fortnite came from games like Call of Duty, where the Zen was quite well known, and some of these players understood that the Zen could be used for Fortnite as well. So some of the best controller players in the world in the first few years of competitive were using this device without basically anyone knowing. And then in 2020 it became super well known and every single controller player got one. You've also throughout the years had similar devices like the Titan 2 who basically did the same thing. Another way a ton of people cheated a few years back, including a handful of pro players, was with DMA cheats. Nowadays, Fortnite has done a fairly good job at preventing DMA cheats, and in higher divisions, you'll very rarely nowadays meet these cheaters. DMA cheats are easily explained cheats that are read off a second computer. This means that getting banned for these kinds of cheats is way harder than getting banned for software cheats. With DMA cheats, you can get everything. Aim hacks, wall hacks, and even zone hacks was a huge thing. Luckily though, nowadays, the problem isn't nearly as bad as back in the day, especially in Division Cups. You will still occasionally meet cheaters in solo series qualifiers, but it's much better. Over to something totally different, we have pro players playing on their friends' accounts in important tournaments. The first time I heard about this was back in the skirmish days. Those were interesting times because the required age to compete was 16 and not 13 like it is today. And a lot of people who competed in the skirmish tournaments were older and not as good as the younger players in the region. So 13-year-old players would sometimes play on 25-year-old players' accounts and take home tens of thousands of dollars from these tournaments because of their abilities as a player, and the 25-year-old would of course get all the credits. And the money would often be split in an agreed upon way. In more recent times, pro players have played on their friends' accounts in tournaments like FNCS Heats to secure, or at least give them better odds, of a grand's qualification. Another interesting period of time was when cheaters had discords where you could paste the game ID of your tournament match into the Discord, and you would get a map of where llamas and launch pads were located on the map. Back in the day, with no sprinting or sliding, movement like launch pads made the game much easier. So having a tool that literally showed you where pads were on the map made the game substantially easier to win. And during this time, a ton of players made hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in earnings because of how they had access to multiple pads in every game they played in Trio Cash Cups, Solo Cash Cups, and even FNCS Weeks. A similar situation happened back in Chapter 1 Season 9 and 10, where coaches could literally hop into replays with no delay. They could use drone feed to find launch pads and scout out where the players they were coaching had to rotate to make it super easy. Additionally, they could find bad teams that were keyable, that either had low PR or terrible loot, and back then eliminations mattered a lot for how you placed in tourneys. So using this way of cheating granted a ton of players way better tournament results than they deserved, and some players earned many tens of thousands of dollars because of this exploit/cheat, because of how ridiculous the prize pool used to be back then. Another bug or way of cheating, if you will, that has earned players thousands of dollars throughout the years has been elo bugging. Most noticeably in the 2019 Winter Real, you could simply change your region to another one than you were playing on and back, and you would play in a lobby with players who had 0 points. You also had a period where a player in trios could leave the match when they were alive in trios in Chapter 2 Season 7, and then when they got back into the lobby after the match was done, you would be on the same points you were on before the match you left. So players ended up just disconnecting in the endgame when they had a good position and had already secured a lot of points, and boom, they would get yet another easy game in the following one. And you could do this as many times as you wanted. Guys, that's a wrap. Join the Discord in the description below, and I hope to see you in the Realistic Arena map. If you want to watch a highly detailed video on how to get better mechanics, check out the video on screen right now.
catch me off guard. Now we have Curve and Kanata, which is the duo that did catch me off guard. Again, Kanata needs a teammate because he can't play with Rapid, so he picked up Curve. Kanata did mention that when the whole Josh Yomzo thing was going down, he almost got dropped by Curve for EWC because it was going to be Josh and Curve for all of the game modes. Despite that then falling through, and now we have Yomzo Josh again. We have Bugha and Kingaling. Kingaling has come out and said that he has split with Jagyu. I know this is like a back and forward. I have no idea what's going on with King and Jagyu, but we had Kanata saying on stream that he's heard that Kingaling thinks that Jagyu is ass, and that's why they're not playing together. Kingling also said in my Twitch chat when I asked him, like, hey, how does Gen G feel about all this? You know, you have one of the biggest orgs in the world sign you and your duo, and you've already split up like 3 times in 2 weeks. Like, surely they're not too happy about that. And he said, look, they're not super stoked about it, but at the same time, if Ritual and Aegis quals, it makes no difference. Only one team can represent each org at the Esports World Cup, and if Ritual and Aegis qual, they're the better team anyway, so it doesn't matter what me and Jagyu do. So I feel like Gen G probably still wouldn't be stoked on the fact that they signed 2 players they wanted to develop and move them to 0 ping and, you know, make them better players. But hey, it's how Fortnite goes. Gen G is getting the full Fortnite experience, and it's cool to see Bugha lining up a really good teammate after Craze split with him. Next up, we have Shadow and Craze now forming up, which are looking really good. And all of these teams I've just talked about have done extremely well on day 1. Qualification for the Reload Elite Series has gone through the ceiling. It is so much harder to make the Elite Series now. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I do want to talk about another big org signing that came out. Now, this one caught me really off guard. Not because I have been predicting it. If you watch my videos, I've been talking about this signing for months now. We have Queasy and Swizzy getting signed to Vitality. You're probably thinking, but Queasy and Swizzy aren't playing together anymore. And that is true. Queasy and Swizzy just got signed despite the fact they have split up as teammates. Now, we have this from Queasy's dad, who shared this in Boop's chat, that apparently the way it's going to work is whichever one of them quals first to the EWC, their teammate is going to get a contract. So I'm guessing Mustache is going to get bought out by Gentle Mates if Queasy and Mustache qualify. And then if Swizzy and Pixie qual, they're going to buy out Pixie from Havoc. I guess Vitality are just like that. I don't know how this is so already locked in and guaranteed. I really would have thought after Queasy and Swizzy split up, they were just going to sign a different team. Like, you've got Sky and Scroll and a few other phenomenal teams out there they could have signed. Queasy and Swizzy are amazing players, don't get me wrong. They just came off the back of winning globals, like 2 of the best players in the world. Queasy has extremely proven LAN experience, but once they weren't playing together, I feel like you just had to find a way to sign one of them and their existing teammate. Otherwise, it just feels like they're going to have a player that's on a contract for no reason. Like, whoever doesn't qual to the finals first, just on a contract that I imagine has to be good money, and they don't really bring anything to the org. I don't think Vitality is going to start making a bunch of content with their players. They might. The whole point of this is because they want to make the Esports World Cup prize pool. So a little bit confused what's going there, but super happy to see that 2 really good players are hopefully getting really good contracts. At the end of the day, if the org wants to spend more money on players supporting them and they're still happy with the return they get, I'm happy. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. This isn't a scam org. I don't think Queasy and Swizzy are going to get scammed. It's Vitality. It's a huge org. It's an awesome opportunity. I'm just kind of surprised they still went through with it. We didn't have too many team swaps on EU being a lot more loyal than NA right now. We did get the answer. Mongraal is officially playing with Turtle for the Esports World Cup and for Battle Royale. Looks like that is the duo going forward for both game modes. Mr. Savage was still a little bit unsure. Mr. Savage ended up playing with Mixon for the EWC Reload tournaments, but at the same time, Rezon is still saying that it's going to be Rezon and Mr. Savage for Battle Royale. Savage just didn't want to drop Mixon last minute. He still wants to play with him, and they're doing quite well. So we don't have a definitive answer from Mr. Savage just yet, but that one's kind of still up in the air. It's either going to be Rezon or Mixon. I guess maybe using the Elite Series as a bit of a test for Mixon and see how they go, see what the vibes are like. Both teams, Mongraal's new team and Savage's new team, playing phenomenally. Mongraal ended up actually being in first place like 3/4 of the way through the tournament. In their first 6 matches, they managed to get 4 wins and a 2nd place. Absolutely popping off. Unfortunately, it did start to drop down the leaderboard towards the end of the tournament. Mr. Savage ended up overtaking them, but right now, Turtle is a phenomenal Reload IGL. They were getting high ground and looking very, very solid. Both teams proving what they said. Look, they're both great players. No one's at fault. They just don't work together. They need to split up, find new teammates, and they'll find success, and that's what we're already seeing here. Before I break down the whole leaderboard, I do want to talk about what is going on with qualification being so unbelievably high. If you played the Elite Series, you're probably thinking like, oh yeah, if I get like 350 points each day on EU, I'll make finals. No. If you want to make the next round of Elite Series, you need over 800 points. qualification has jumped up by like 100 points from last qualifier. A lot of people asking me, Ozzy, why is this? There's a few things. They changed the point format. You start getting placement points at 15th now. So even though it's still 60 points for a win, it's distributed a lot more evenly throughout. So players can be a lot more consistent. If you go down in, 12th or 13th now, you've gained more points than what you have before. You still get the same amount for a win, but that means there's people being more consistent. Now, secondly, whatever Fortnite said they did to fix the queues in Reload, they still didn't give us any clarification on how that works. They definitely did. Queues are unbelievably quick now. So people are actually getting through their 12 games each day, which is going to make the points way higher. And then thirdly, there's just more people playing. I'm guessing people just thought the Reload tournament sucked because they used to. Again, I was the biggest Reload competitive hater. There used to be so many bugs and so many issues of Reload, but they fixed it up now. And I think people seeing the Elite Series, watching the finals, realizing like, hey, this is actually a good tournament. Like, I should play this, has seen the player base go up as well. So I think those three things combined has made qualification a lot higher. It's going to be quite tough to make this play-ins unless you've been really, really locked in. Going through the leaderboard for EU and A to see who is doing well and who is currently on pace. Again, this is nowhere near enough points for either first place on both regions. They still need to do well on day 2. We have Muzz and Sphinx, the new duo, coming out on 535 points. We also had Noah W plays and Northern getting another top 5 in a tournament. This duo is looking really, really solid. Josh and Yomzo, clearly the vibes haven't affected them. They're in 6th place overall on 508. We managed to have Donnie and Chance, which I'm kind of gassed up for, in 12th place overall, looking good. Curve and Kanata, another brand new duo, finishing in 15th. We had Oliver OG and Carillion in 20th. We had Threats and Rise in 19th. Threats did tweet out that him and Rise had split, but then they ended up queuing the tournament together. So I don't know if there was like kind of a bit of a mini snaking right before the tournament started, or just Threats being the troll that he is. Clicks ended up queuing up from LA. Clicks and Higgs are both in LA for a streamer event that Clicks is going to, and they still managed to get 25th overall, which is very good, because if they missed this, it would have been a bit brutal. Booga and Kingling, brand new duo, also getting 30th. Cold and Rapid, our week 1 winners, no surprise, in 36th overall. Pretty much all of the big teams in that top 100, but like I said, they really need a solid day 2 to secure it and bring it home. Going through the EU leaderboard, like I said, despite being in first for a whole bunch of the tournament, Mongrel did slip down to 131st. Still very much on pace. Remember, top ball is top 2,000, so 131, still very, very solid. Ended up getting overtaken by Mr. Savage. Mr. Savage finished in 79th overall alongside Mixon. At the top of the leaderboard, we had Yapko and Panzer bringing it home in 1st place. We had Swizzy and Pixie in 4th, looking very solid for maybe the Vitality signing for Pixie. Don't know if this potential situation is going to motivate him to try even harder. We have Chap and Flixie finishing in 6th, Shark and Teeny in 9th. That team is just too damn consistent right now. Focus and Thomas down in 25th, trying to bring things back for Virtus Pro after not making it through to heats in the first qualifier. For Deal and Noah, still running it up in 28th overall. It was a very fun tournament, but like I said, none of these teams are safe yet. Day 2 still matters. We have Div 1 finals first. Fortnite did break it up a little bit, so I'm not going to be able to do the recap video of who ended up qualifying tomorrow. That'll most likely be the next day after day 2. Bit of a weird one to throw into this video, but I saw a tweet by FN Assist that has me a little bit worried. They have said that the chapter is being delayed potentially by 2 months, or at least a new map has. So they tweeted out, the BR Chapter 7 map discovery has been extended by 2 months. It has been modified to end on the 14th of August. Now, they said this usually indicates a mini season or difference in maps, such as The Simpsons or Remix. So basically, we're going to be going to a new map, whether it's a new chapter, whether it's a mini season, but I'm not really worried about it being delayed until August. I'm a little bit worried about the fact that we are getting a new map apparently right in the middle of what should be FNCS 3 coming up and Globals. Are we going to potentially have a different map for the second half of the competitive year, the last FNCS, arguably the most important, and Globals, than what we have now? I don't know if it's going to be a mini season. Maybe we're just going to go to a mini season during that period. It does actually line up really, really well with the Esports World Cup finals. We have the EWC finals taking place around that time, but we have FNCS 2 that's supposed to be taking place around July, August. I have no idea what this means. This is incredibly confusing. League has already said it looks like we're going away from the 1 year a chapter kind of format, where it's just, a chapter lasts 1 year, and then we're going to a new chapter. This chapter's supposed to last longer, but we might get a brand new map midway through, or some kind of crazy mini season. that could be very interesting for competitive. It's been a long time since we've had FNCS. I feel it probably as much, if not more, than what you guys do. It's been a long time, but the best thing about the competitive schedule right now is once we kick off with FNCS 1 in April, like, we are going. Again, this is the schedule that I've written up. Again, it's pretty, you know, scuffed, but we have FNCS 1 in April. We have the Elite Series Qualifier 3 in May. We have the first LAN in May. We have another Elite Series Qualifier, the last chance to make EWC. Then we have FNCS Major 2, Esports World Cup Finals, and then we go into FNCS Major 3 into Globals. That is all taking place within like a 7-month period. Like, this season is going to go insane for competitive once we get to the first FNCS, and we might have an entirely new map in the middle of that. I really don't know what to think of that.
After 5 years of pro Valorant, it's time to decide the 10 greatest Valorant players of all time. Well, actually 15, but I'm sure you won't mind. Also, I didn't consider IGLing very much when constructing this list. We don't actually know their impact without being on the team, and so it's hard to compare. But with all that out of the way, let's get started with number 15, the crazy Raze we all know and love, Jing. After PaperX's Masters win in Toronto, their players can finally start being considered for lists like this, and Jing definitely deserves a spot in the top 15. He's been a core member of PaperX throughout their 5-year tenure in the VCT, from dominating Masters Copenhagen all the way back in 2022 to dumpstering Sentinels in Toronto in 2025. Jing's mechanics, both movement and aim-wise, have to be admired, and there really is no one who embodies the crazy Raze playstyle like him. When I think of Raze,
Normally I don't do initial impressions, but here I am because the internet will not stop talking about this mouse. And for some reason, 95% of all people I see talking about it are shilling the shit out of it. So as a quick disclaimer, I bought this with my own money. I also didn't get invited to the Logitech event, which a lot of reviewers and also other people of the internet did. So all of my opinions are all my own, and I will be as honest as I can possibly be about this. Also, please keep in mind, these are just my initial impressions for the first 24 hours. But of course, you should absolutely wait for my full review in about a week in order to get my proper thoughts and opinions after some actual time of spending with this mouse. First of all, I want to mention that obviously there has been no changes about the shape. They're still using their 8-year-old mold with the bulge here on the right side from the GPW. As you can see, the total amount of travel on the side buttons on the 2C is pretty minimal, especially when comparing it to the GPX2 over here. And for the Super Strike, it really isn't any better. One thing that actually is better about this mouse is that it now has no ridges around the skates anymore. Just like the 2C over here, which also had this updated base design. So unlike the GPX2 or the GPX1 over here with these ridges around the skates, these are no longer going to be dragging on really soft pads. The skate material is actually no longer PTFE, it is UHWMPE. This is a material that works very well on glass because it has better durability. But if you're on a glass pad, I would still highly recommend you to use dot skates because they pick up less dust and also less hairs on your pad. Comparing these side by side to 100% translucent PTFE pad skates, the skates feel a tiny bit more controlled. I'd say overall they are 1% slower than the fastest PTFE skates that I have here. The difference is very small, and so far I do not mind these skates. These are perfectly fine for me personally so far. The question is just if the friction will change over time, so we will have to wait and see what that's going to be like within the next few weeks. The grips, I'm not even going to show you inside the box. They are still the absolute same as the GPX2 or the 2C. They have made no improvements over there, but one thing that is very different compared to the normal GPX2 is the scroll. On the 2C, the scroll is now a lot more tactile and definitely more heavy to use and also much more defined in terms of its steps. And this is now the same encoder over here on the Super Strike, but this one feels even more tactile in my personal unit here. In terms of the click feel, it's pretty decent. It's really not bad and you get adjusted to it pretty quickly. Understand what this actually feels like, go into a tech store, try out the trackpad of a MacBook Air, and it's going to be the exact same. The main difference is that you do have actual travel, and within this range of travel you can set your actuation point to whatever you want it to be. The side wobble is still there and you still can wobble your switches around if you click at the bottom of the switches here, but if you click anywhere above here and you just use the mouse normally, it feels absolutely perfectly fine in game so far. I use an actuation point of 1 over on my left mouse button because I want to try and see if I can actually get used to it to get the best advantage of this mouse as possible. Because the way that this mouse is going to give you an advantage is if you set your actuation point to something really low, like 1 or 2, you will just physically react faster because the click will actuate faster than a normal mechanical mouse switch. There's no longer a huge bump of pre-travel or just some weight slowing you down. It's really just you against the actuation point that you personally want to and what you want to use. In very hectic games like Fortnite, I constantly misclick with an actuation point of 1. You could call that a skill issue, but that is just anyone who's used to normal mechanical switches, especially more tactile ones. In slower games where I don't need to do 360s the whole time, just like Marvel Rivals for example, I can absolutely use an actuation point of 1. And I also think that if you're playing attack FPS and you don't need to do constant swipes the whole time, this actually is usable, but you do need to get used to it. The main issue here is going to be you accidentally clicking when doing a 180-degree swipe on a very low sensitivity, because then you might actually just accidentally click just by moving your mouse around. The click haptics you can really set to whatever you want it to. This is just a feedback of the click and it happens after your click is actually actuated, or pretty much at the same time, but don't think about the haptics stopping you from clicking as fast as possible. This is simply feedback. This is not a mechanical resistance that is making you want to press the button harder. If you want to benefit from this system, you need to click as light as possible. You need to put absolutely zero force on your index finger. That's the only way that you're actually going to benefit from this system. By loosening up your grip and just triggering the very start of the button with this low actuation point, you're not only more accurate because you're tension maxing, but you're also just straight up faster. On heroes like Hela on Marvel Rivals for example, I absolutely noticed a difference just because I'm able to put no tension into my index finger because it is so darn easy to actuate the mouse click, and I did just straight up hit shots that I normally probably wouldn't have. I'm editing the video right now and I also have some further thoughts here. Here I am comparing it to the OP18K V2 with the SPDT switches. They're the 2nd gen GX switches with the lighter actuation force. I have it set to the speed mode here on 8K polling. I have 8K polling here on the Super Strike enabled as well, with the actuation point set to 1. And here's some further proof to how the only way to benefit from the hit system is to use no force on your index finger. The way that this test works is that you have 2 mice, which is going to be the OP18K and the GPX Super Strike over here. You have a hard piece of plastic that you press in the center of with your index finger. And I've now done this a bunch of times and you can see that the Super Strike here is noticeably quicker if I put absolutely no tension onto my index finger when clicking the mouse button. This is because the hit system can react much faster with no effort because there is pretty much no force required in order to actuate the mouse button. And if you play very loose with your aim and you have your index finger also very loose and you put pretty much no pressure to the mouse button, you can just straight up react quicker because it takes a lot more force to move a mechanical button. However, This changes a lot when you put force into your click. If you click the way that you would click a mouse with a normal mechanical switch and you put some force into it, the difference is insanely minimal and it's pretty much the same. This is because your finger accelerates a lot more, and because you put a lot more pressure into it, the physical mouse button will just pretty much actuate at the same point as the hit system will. Especially here with the SPDT system, where as soon as you remove the contact from the top plate, the switch actuates. So what does this mean for you? If you already own a XM2AK or 31AK or whatever mouse with SPDT switches, and you have it set to the most sensitive mode and you don't mind putting some force into your mouse click, you will not benefit from the Super Strike. But if you adapt to the hit system and you set it to the lowest actuation point and you press with your index finger very loosely, and you can overall play with a more relaxed grip, which also will benefit your aim, you can definitely have an advantage with the hit system. But yeah, in theory, you can be just as fast with SPDT, you just need to press the switch a bit harder. Rapid trigger is only useful for games where you absolutely need to spam mouse 1. This could be a game like Fortnite with editing, or something like Minecraft PvP where you want to spam your mouse button as quick as possible. Rapid trigger is the same as on your Hall of Fame. If you set it to the fastest option and this is your mouse 1 and you move it down like this and you let it go for a tiny bit and click it again, it will actuate again, and you will also feel the feedback at that specific point where you're clicking it again. The different steps is just how fast it actually reacts or how much you need to travel up in order for it to actuate again. The only real way you're truly going to benefit from that system is if you actuate your mouse button and just vibrate your index finger like this and constantly spam the actuation points this way. If you just treat it like a normal mechanical switch because you're used to having to apply force to it and also going up to the normal actuation point up in the mechanical switch, you're not going to benefit from it. You do need to play this switch system differently in order to actually take advantage of it. As I've already said, click haptics is just how much feedback you want. It is pretty cool for customization, but even if I set the click haptics all the way up to the strongest setting, I can still click just as fast with the normal setting. Keep in mind that these are just initial impressions, but yeah, let's get into the rest of the video. Let's try to draw a pretty early conclusion. Is this revolutionary tech? In my opinion, only if you already like the GPX shape and don't mind the weight. It's 61 grams and most people are absolutely fine with that, but the weight distribution is pretty unfortunate. As you can see, if I try to find the balance point of this mouse, it's all the way here towards the front. If you play a lower sensitivity, you will definitely notice the weight that is shifted towards the front because of this whole click system, because of the centrifugal force kind of throwing the weight of the mouse forwards. I don't hate it so far, but I can definitely notice it when playing with a low sensitivity. One of the biggest issues for a lot of you people is also going to be the shape, just because it's that much of a potato. For me personally, with my 19 by 10 centimeter hands, it just feels very wide towards the front. Compared to pretty much any other mouse I have on my desk right now, the width towards the front, especially because it clears out and just feels so boxy here, it just feels uncomfortable for me personally, and I really need to get adjusted to it just to be able to play my best with it. I would highly recommend you to only buy this thing if you already think you're gonna like the shape or you already know that you like the GPX. But the biggest issue about this mouse is just a price tag. 180 euros. For 180 euros, you could get this mouse, this mouse pad, a VGN Neo 68HE Hall Effect keyboard, and you will have an entire 8K polling setup that probably beats 99% of all the people in your lobbies. Not only that, but you're probably also gonna get a shape and size that just suits you better. I personally just feel a lot more consistent with a shape and a size that I like, and you probably will as well. Of course, you can get adjusted to it and just play your best with it, but especially for smaller hands, I would absolutely recommend you to wait for the Super Strike 2C, which will come out. I also do want to mention that there's no WebDriver so far. It's just G-Hub and the onboard memory manager that I'm going to link down in the description below. Do I think it's going to be the future of mice so far? I don't know. What I think that we need right now is just scientific testing compared to SPDT switches and not just human benchmark tests. I also want third-party tests, not tests from Logitech themselves, because that's obviously biased. So I really hope that someone is going to put together some type of contraption just to do actual testing. There's always going to be a benefit from this over normal mechanical and optical switches, but I think that SPDT is really not that far. that's about it for now, though. Definitely make sure to subscribe to the channel as well if you're at all interested in gaming mice and Hall Effect keyboards. And I'll see you guys pretty soon. Peace out.
If you ever thought your keybinds were bad, you clearly haven't heard of Scroll, who qualified for Globals in 2024 using his literal scroll wheel to switch. Something that Cold is really good at is finding and taking the missing piece, meaning when there's a build the opponent should have placed but they didn't, Cold always takes advantage of this. In this first fight here, he wingsuits in and starts building towards the opponent. He misses his edit, but both him and the opponent realize that Cold took the wood wall between them, and most of the time the opponent would be out of range here to get shots since he is looking to turn around and place a wall here to block his back as he gets out. Cold makes a really smart play here though. Instead of looking for a shot here, he knows that the build grid will allow him to take the wall by the opponent, even if he cannot actually see where the opponent is to shoot him. So he snags the wall and takes that extra missing piece, and is able to edit it and shoot the opponent while the opponent is looking to place his own wall here. Cold then follows the opponent and again takes the extra missing piece here. A lot of players would just look to 50-50 the opponent coming off of their floor, but Cold takes the floor and cone, but narrowly scuffs his edits, allowing his opponent to escape. Cold then cranks up towards the opponent where he baits the opponent to open, knowing that any 50-50 trade here is in his favor with the health advantage. If Cold had just looked to shoot the opponent at the start of the fight, the opponent would have been able to block a shot before Cold could see him, meaning that he would have been able to open up the fight and get the advantage. Here is another instance where Cold looks for the extra piece to quickly win a fight. He opens up the fight with 2 AR tags and sprint slides towards the opponent while spraying the opponent's front wall, places doubles, and instantly pulls out his gun to look for a free fire. In the span of about a second, he did 3 pressure options here, and the opponent needs to relocate and didn't get a chance to heal because of it. Cold starts pickaxing through the opponent's walls, and the opponent opens up here. Instead of looking to shoot, Cold knows the opponent is looking to move into the box behind him, so he just pulls out his wall and sets up an easy Mongrel classic while blocking the shot and sprays the opponent. He then follows the opponent, and notice here how he takes this wall and looks to cone the opponent. This would have finished off the fight if he got it, but he was a fraction of a second off. The storm then starts coming, and Cold realizes very quickly that it is going to be 5-10. Knowing he has hit the opponent for over 150 damage, he makes the quick decision to just leave the fight and go to zone, knowing that the opponent is pretty much stuck in storm in his own build, and Cold will get the chance to beam him out of the air with the wingsuit if he makes it back. Cold also knows he doesn't really need the refresh, so it's not crucial that he gets the loot, and instead just lets the opponent die to zone and gets the Siphon to get him back to full HP and the kill stick. Cold's decision making here was really strong, allowing him to win this fight. Here's one more example of Cold taking the missing piece. Here, Cold dive bombs on this rotating opponent to surprise him. Something else with Cold's gameplay that is really effective regardless if he plays the game a ton or not is that he does have a fragger's instinct to hard push anyone in the best possible manner who is even slightly distracted, leaving them open. If you look closely, Cold notices the opponent he is flying towards, quickly turns around here to look at another player who had just opened their cone behind him. Knowing the opponent is building to block his back and is not fully aware of the wingsuiters, Cold dive bombs where the opponent is going toward with his momentum instead of straight at him. If you've ever thrown an American football at a moving target, you know that you should aim where the target is moving towards instead of where they are, as it takes time for the ball to actually move to its destination. Cold uses this principle here. He aims ahead of the distracted opponent with his wingsuit here, so he is moving into him and gets a free tag since Cold is too close to the opponent to quickly block his shot. Cold then goes up here and crucially places a cone above him on the opponent's floor when he is going up. This sets him up to break through the opponent's floor, allowing him to instantly edit up, take the missing wall in front of the opponent who thought he would have more time, and cone and shoot the opponent to quickly finish the fight. This fragger's instinct that Cold has allows him to find quick kills and refreshes on opponents who are even the slightest bit distracted. Here's an example of this in the end game here. Cold is on height and he is starting to look for a refresh, and he sets up an angle here where he has a good view of everything directly below him, which often players fail to do on height, and their tarp often obstructs their point of view. Because of this, he gets a tag on a rotating opponent and cracks his shield. Most players here would get shot in the side when going for this refresh, but Cold makes a really nice play here when he notices an opponent staring at him, and he just stares right back and pre-fires until he can move to safety. He then boxes up right above the opponent to cover his top and simply double pickaxes in here as the opponent assumes that Cold had boxed up elsewhere or had already rotated since there was a pretty large time gap between these two time frames. Being able to take your crosshair off of a possible refresh and have a mental track of where they are in the endgame is really valuable, and Cold also invested a ton of extra materials into making sure that he could safely take this 50-50 to get more materials as the outcome. Back to taking the extra piece though. Something that Cold does all the time to secure kills is taking the middle wall in an opponent's 2x1. Here's a quick example of that, where Cold sees an opponent and tags him once. Cold jump slides while spraying at the opponent to make sure he couldn't heal, and pieces up above the opponent, taking away the option to escape from above. Cold is about to drop down to the side here, and he's already made up his mind on what he is going to do before he even does it here. He hits the wall once with his pickaxe and pulls out his gun to pre-fire. Before Cold even drops down to the wall, he knows the opponent is looking to edit on him here, since he didn't tag him for very much. So Cold swings left here to cover himself with the opponent's edit, where the opponent misses a tough shot. Instead of looking to shoot instantly from the pre-fire, since the opponent's wall is open, Cold looks to take this mid wall and the 2x1 here that the opponent left open. From here, finishing the fight is simple. Open a wide edit with a health advantage while the opponent is trying to escape, and pump and spray him. I can't even tell you how many times good players like Cold take this mid wall here for a free kill. It is the biggest mistake that competitive players consistently make. All you need to do is place a wall here and edit it open before you get pressure, but so many players forget to do that. Here's another example. Cold starts the fight by boxing himself in to protect himself from third parties, and weakens multiple of the opponent's pieces, and takes a ton of piece all around to establish an advantage in the fight. He sprays through a wood wall since they have such little HP for 2 free tags, and the opponent tries to disengage, but Cold chases. Similar to that earlier example, Cold does a good job of placing cones on the opponent's doors instantly here to make sure the opponent didn't have an easy edit, which also allows him to set up this really nice chop play since he took the cone here. Chopping is also something Cold does a lot that I will go over later. He gets a free tag here and follows the opponent and goes to pickaxe's wall. Again, this opponent fails to take the middle wall in his 2x1, and Cold is able to finish the fight that way. As I mentioned, Cold uses chopping a ton, which is another strategy to remain strong regardless of the meta. He gets on a good high layer in the endgame here and notices that someone built their base entirely on top of his brick box. Players do this all the time, as most people don't expect to get chopped in a chaotic endgame where additional builds are being connected pretty often. Cold realizes though that on this high layer, he is relatively safe to make a play here, and the opponent doesn't have anything else to connect to, so he simply top row edits the 4 walls of his box and easily finds a quick refresh. Here is one final example of Cold's smart decision making in this fight here. To start the fight, he takes the opponent's wall and almost hits a shot, but instead of getting tunnel vision here inside old builds and continuing to follow the opponent, he resets his builds and relocates to another angle. He does a common setup players use when they are about to drop down on the opponent's wall, but instead of dropping down, he stops on a dime to hit the opponent's cone to bait him into opening, where Cold is sitting there ready with a pre-fire. Cold gets third party here and leaves his top open while he heals to gather info on both his opponent and the third partier, knowing he will have time to react if one of them makes a play. He then blocks the third partier's angle with his base and starts smacking the opponent's tops. He takes the cone and makes a great play here using his movement. He opens the cone and starts to shoot the floor. While he is shooting though, he is moving toward the left to get behind his edited wall, but the opponent reacts to his visual audio where he should be able to get a pump shot in, but Cold has moved behind the wall by the time the opponent peeks while he's spraying. Cold is unable to shoot the opponent from a really strong right-hand peek, and then takes the low health floor and easily finishes the fight. Cold has put in a ton of work over the years to master decision making and taking the extra piece from the opponent, and combined with his incredible aim and fragger's instinct, he is able to maintain his really high level of play without grinding despite many meta changes. If you are interested in an up and coming pro who looks like he might become the best fragger in the world, check out this video on Shima.
At my peak, I was the 816th best player in Europe, which was not particularly impressive given that I tried my absolute heart out and played for hours every single day. Over the years, people have rightfully dropped comments on my videos claiming that I should just follow my own advice to become a professional player. This video right here is going to be my most important video ever for aspiring pro players. Over the years, I've understood many reasons behind why I didn't make it. And the sad thing is that I see thousands of ambitious players who are really passionate about the game, just like me, who are sadly never even going to get a chance to go pro because of their practice methods. If I could speak to myself when I just got into competitive Fortnite, this video are the exact things I would have said. And as a result, I wouldn't have ended up peaking as the 816th best player, but rather qualifying for tournaments quite consistently and being way higher on the power rankings leaderboards. The first major mistake I made was thinking that winning was good for improvement. I've always been someone who's loved playing creative, but I've never been good at looking for opponents that beat me long term.
Okay, so if you don't know, South Korea is now facing an iPhone epidemic.
아이폰이요. 갤럭시. Stop the cap.
And Samsung might need to start worrying. Okay, so imagine this. You're on a first date, you guys are talking, and things are going pretty well. Both of you finish your meal and go up to the counter to pay. Goddamn, the bill came up to $97.50, but it's okay. You got this. You pull out your Samsung Galaxy Fold 5 and open that baby up and move it towards the pay machine. You look back at your date. Her smile slowly disappears. She looks at your phone and now back at you with a very concerned look. You pay, say your goodbyes, and go your separate ways. And that's the last you ever hear of her. Look, my audience is pretty smart, and that's pretty clear from my last video. Well, most of you anyway. So you know that this is an absolutely insane situation that will probably never play out in real life. But did you know that in some parts of the world, some people legitimately form conclusive opinions about a whole ass person, their character,
Here's 39 tips to fight better in Fortnite Chapter 7.
The new Iron Pump has an incredibly fast bullet time of 330 milliseconds. So these first two tips are ways that you can abuse that to be as fast mechanically as possible with minimal effort. If you've just placed a build and then edited right after that, you realize you still confirm this with your blueprint out. This means there's an additional delay because you have to press your shotgun button. So in order to be as fast as possible, you should place the build, pull out your shotgun, and then edit, as you can almost shoot instantly. This is why it's beneficial to not have your edit bind and your shotgun bind on the same finger, as you repeatedly have to push the shotgun bind right before the edit one. If you hold down your shoot button just as you're about to confirm the edit, this will also remove as much delay between editing and shooting as possible. So if you combine these last two tips, the fastest way that you could possibly shoot is to edit with your pump out and then hold down the shot. Once you get good at this, doing 50-50 window edits is actually very good because they often can't react fast enough and you can get a shot off and then reset. If they've already shot their shotgun shot, this will also mean that if they try to spray through the wall, they cannot get through at all because they're going to shoot through the gap. Sure, they might hit you with an AR bullet, but you can easily pump them. A funny side effect of this is sometimes when you try to do this, a player will hurdle through your window, as Cooper accidentally did here, but luckily he still managed to win the fight. On the flip side of this, you're also benefited by making much safer peaks too. Because the structure damage is much lower on this shotgun in comparison to the Sentinels than previous, once a wall is edited, it's very hard to retake it with your pump. So you should not try to edit as fast as possible. You should try to slow down by half a second, maybe even a tenth of a second, and just make sure that you're in the right position before you click confirm. In this example, Fishy holds the edit on the ramp, but waits a second to swing to the left before confirming. He's not going to be as fast as possible. He knows he has the player fully boxed, and then he can swing back into it, hit the shot, and reset. Really basic movement, but it's more important now than ever because the other player cannot steal the wall with the pump. So you can hold hold your edit for a small time to make sure you have the perfect peak, or you can do a fast 50-50 and then reset. This shotgun basically gives you the option to do both when you sentinel it up. If you're protecting the wall from an awkward left-hand angle, it's almost always best to do a bottom right 4-tile edit, because this can still cut off the line of sight from the other player. If you're going to place doubles over an opponent, you should do this diagonally onto the box that they're actually in. This is because as you drop down and place 2 walls on the inside, you're actually gaining peace onto 3 separate tiles rather than just the one that you think your opponent is going to go into. If you're the aggressive one in a fight, you don't actually need to build in hard mats. The reason for this is if you freshly placed a brick or metal wall and then immediately edited it, you realize it goes to extremely low HP, or it will be able to be AR or pump replace. However, because wood starts at a higher HP, if you place a build and then edit it, it will actually have a higher HP and be harder to retake. Obviously, this isn't applicable in every scenario. If you're ramping up or defensively box fighting, obviously don't do this, but if you're trying to be quick, this can save your hard mats for later. Just because the shotgun has less structure damage doesn't mean you shouldn't shoot walls, but you have to do this in a very safe way. Here, Ficky hits this player for white, so he jumps down onto his wall. When he attempts to retake it, he fails to get the wall the first time, but his muscle memory is to pull out his shotgun so that if he got the wall when he edits, he'll be able to shoot him quickly, like our earlier tip. But because he failed to steal the wall, he then switches to his assault rifle to then spray, and eventually once the other player is holding, he switches back to his pickaxe and is able to steal it and kill it. So the muscle memory to build up is pretty simple. Wall replace, pull out your shotgun before you edit, attempt the edit, shoot to weaken the wall, and then switch to the AR to try and replace again. Because the bullet time's so fast, you can also edit reset and not hold the wall and just wait for them to shoot and then pump them back in return and then re-hold the wall afterwards. Something which is much more difficult with a slower pull-out weapon like the Thunder. Stop trying to full box people. Even though you watch the pros at the highest level, the amount of times that they actually fully box someone is very minimal. Most of the time, they're getting 1 or 2 build pieces between them, editing, and then with the fast pull-out can hit a nice shot. However, see a lot of people just try to get someone in the full box, get every single wall, every single cone, and because of that, they miss the opportunity to actually shoot them. If you have a gray or green pump, you have to shoot them in the head to kill them when they have no shield, as both of these do under 100 damage. However, with the blue and above, you can go for a max body shot and still one pump them. If you ADS and crouch, your shotgun crosshair goes incredibly small, so if you're in endgame and looking from a safe peak, it basically makes sense to always crouch and ADS as you'll hit a higher damage shot. The hammer shotguns are actually pretty good if you're within a 1-tile radius, and a lot of people try to be too mechanical with them by trying to do a lot of edits and resets, but in reality, all you need to do is get on the right hand peak and jiggle peek them like Fishy does here. When at a distance with these, a lot of players make the mistake of aiming right at the head, and as you can see I can do 78 damage here. However, if you actually go slightly down to the upper chest, you notice I do with much more consistent damage because more of the pellets are hitting the player, whereas when I'm looking up here, more of the bullets are just missing. The easiest ways to actually find high rarity shotguns are through rare chest, as there's an 11% chance to be purple and a 4% chance to be gold. The 515 kilo deadlift, as is a 3.17 chance to be purple, 6% chance to be gold, and a 33.3% chance to be mythic. And then also always keep an eye out on vending machines, because green is only 250 gold, blue is 500, and purple is 1000, which is actually quite easy to get. If you had to disengage from a fight and you're weak, you can get a patch up for 200 gold from the mending machines, or a shield keg for 750 gold. Mending machines are visible on your map when you're 400 meters away from them, so if you know their location and there's not one on the map, someone has destroyed it. You can also get ammo from the vending machines, as this only costs 100 gold, but you have to be lucky with the right spawn. So you should always check if the assault rifle one is spawned so you can get easy ammo. If you try to break them, you realize they're invincible. However, if you destroy the floors that they're standing on, they'll just disappear. If you're going to rotate away from this place and don't plan on coming back, it's a good idea to destroy them to grief other players. Because big pots seem so unbelievably rare this season, you need to be comfortable fighting with 150 HP. This makes it even more important to make sure you're making good peaks, because you can easily get one pumped. Sprint jumping and pulling out your shotgun currently has a massive delay, so you can't do sprint side jump and shoot. However, now because you can aim down sights whilst jumping, this will cancel out this bug, meaning you can pull out your shotgun and shoot much faster. Another way you can side jump shoot is by sliding just before you click jump. This will pull out your shotgun, so it won't have the same bug as it does previously, but it also won't make you jump as high, which means that your side jumps can actually be a little bit more controlled and you probably won't fall to your death as much. Similarly, when you're jump peeking from behind a peanut butter, you can now ADS for more consistent damage. However, it is harder to hit the shot. This is also very effective if you're ever jumping over a wall to go for a shot, as the smaller crosshair has a much higher chance of dealing higher damage. Weapons like the Enforcer lose their first shot accuracy when you jump, but for some reason when you jump ADSing with the pistol, it maintains this, making it very easy to hit shots at range. If you want to pressure the enemy as you're trying to close the gap, you can sprint, jump, and then ADS and start spraying, and then you can slide and jump again to repeatedly keep the forward momentum whilst pressuring them with high accuracy. There are a few weapons where rarity really matters. With the green pistol, it'll deal 24 damage and then 48 headshot. However, the blue will deal 25 body and 50 headshot. This means when you're going for a headshot with the green, you actually take 5 bullets in order to kill someone. However, it'll take only 4 with the blue. This is the exact same with the blue and the purple Deadeye assault rifle as well. This ends up when trying to wall replace. It'll take 7 shots to destroy the wall with a blue AR, but only 6 with the purple. Or it'll take 1 pickaxe and 4 shots with blue, or 1 pickaxe and 3 shots with purple. Small note, but the pistol is the only gun that has a 2 times headshot multiplier. So shoot it in the head. Despite the fact that the stats on basically every weapon is better than the Deadeye assault rifle, the fact that it has a scope means that almost every single pro is going to carry it. Through most of the tournaments, whether they're W key or not, the vast majority of pros are carrying it, especially in this meta where so many players are using the wingsuit to fly through the sky. Despite having a scope, the Hollow Rush SMG is horrible after 70 meters. However, under 30 meters, which is around 6 tiles, this thing almost has the highest damage per second of any gun, but it's also the easiest to use. However, because so many people are flying into the sky, they're further away, and therefore this thing isn't as effective. AR aim is probably one of the most important parts of fighting, full stop. That's really it. Just practice your AR aim, honestly. If you get knocked, you might as well spam the roll feature. You're not going to survive, but it might at least grief the kill you. To counter this, if you manage to get a knock, you should immediately box them up, because they are going to try to run away from you, and if this happens in an endgame, well, you've just lost your refresh and your siphon. Now, I can't get someone to confirm this, but it feels like sliding and jumping off of a negative gradient will actually push you further than it used to. This means you can do things like Cactus is doing here, where you sprint jump and slide off of the ramp, and angle swap incredibly fast, which makes it very difficult to counter. Again, not sure if this is actually being buffed, but it just feels like it has. If you use the wingsuit, there is a delay before you can shoot. However, there is no delay before you can build. And if you pull out your builds right as you've landed, this will also cancel the roll animation you do, making it much easier to land in a specific spot. If you build too high in a fight and need to get down, you can cover your top with a bunch of floors and then use the wingsuit into this, and this will just drop you straight down to low ground.
This video is sponsored by Nebula. I have a beef to settle today, and it's about PUBG, Fortnite, and historical revisionism. No fancy intro, let's just start this shit. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is a battle royale shooter that released in 2017, 6 years from this video's upload. It features a 100-player battle in an increasingly shrinking play zone until one person or team is left standing. PUBG is one of the most influential games of the past 10 years, the largest reason being that it kicked off the battle royale frenzy that's led to not just every single AAA studio's take on the genre, but Fortnite, one of the most culturally dominant and successful video games of all time. Now, unlike a lot of people, I don't really have a problem with Fortnite itself, but I do have a problem with how PUBG began to be treated as Fortnite passed it in popularity. So first, let's talk about what PUBG is. PUBG is slow. Out of almost any battle royale I've seen, this game consists mainly of quiet moments. While gunfights are the actual highlights of PUBG, those are only small moments between looting, traveling, and waiting for the game to advance. While matches do run on a timer, it's only ever pressing when you're the clear opposite of the map or near the end of the game, leaving plenty of space for silence. The game, like most shooters, doesn't have any music during the gameplay itself, leaving room for sound to be a key component in gunfights. However, while many games have sound act almost intimately, being something you listen closely to and many times giving you mere milliseconds to prepare, sound in PUBG is this roaring warning siren. While traveling can be slow and occasionally tedious, just watching someone else do it doesn't give you the whole experience. Your time spent traveling is focused on scanning the horizon line, listening for sound cues, choosing where to go, darting from cover to cover. Gameplay is blanketed by this heavy feeling of paranoia, like you could be shot at any moment, because most times you very well could. While you are constantly searching for others, so is everybody else, and a quiet moment can be suddenly ripped to shreds in an instant if you're not the first to the draw. And also, guns sound fucking terrifying in this game. They're so loud, so much louder than any other sound in the game.